Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is your tropical update for November 9th. Tropical storm Nicole over the Bahamas, where it made landfall on Great Abaco Island earlier this morning, now making its way towards Florida, where hurricane as well as storm surge and tropical storm warnings are in effect. As we can see here, sorry about that glare. It's rather bright today, isn't it? Anyways, as we zoom out, we can see the main feature is Nicole. I'm going to fix that light and we'll return. Maybe that's better. It's really not, isn't it? That should do it. All right. Yeah, that looks much better. Anyways, as we can see here, no changes to the impact map. We're keeping it relatively consistent at this point. Perhaps some effects north of Virginia, but at that point, it won't be a tropical cyclone, including, of course, rain. All severe hazard or all tropical hazards are possible. With Nicole again moving back to the zoomed in image, you can see the convection around the center, making it look much like a tropical cyclone now, especially as compared to a couple days ago when it was subtropical. Nonetheless, those tropical storm force winds extend very far away from the center. It's about 800 miles wide, according to the Hurricane Center, in terms of those tropical storm force winds. As you can see, they're almost already reaching the Gulf, and it's still, over 12 hours or about 12 hours away from landfall in Florida and extending far into the Atlantic as well. Flooding is concerned, 3 to 5 inches isolated to 8 over the Bahamas, 2 to 4 isolated to 6 throughout the eastern United States, including Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, and the eastern portions of Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia, and even Ohio, perhaps even further into Maryland as well. Storm surge 4 to 6 feet in the Bahamas, 3 to 5 in northern Florida, as well as up into portions of Georgia as well, 2 to 4 feet in much of the other areas of Florida, including the Gulf Coast as well as the Atlantic coast and up to South Carolina. Winds are possible to Category 1 hurricane force along the immediate area where it is a hurricane. Other than that, it's going to be tropical storm force winds. And as I mentioned, very wide range of those winds. 70 mile an hour are the max winds at this point, and there is potential it does become a hurricane. Those hurricane warnings in that brighter red, tropical storm warnings in the darker, more maroon colored red, as you can see, from South Carolina all the way down through portions of southeastern Georgia into much of the Florida Peninsula, including about the entire eastern half of the panhandle of Florida at this point. As you can see, the pressure is relatively steady after the Hurricane Hunter missions earlier today. And as we can see on radar, it now is visible on U.S. radar as it makes its approach towards Florida between Miami and Orlando. As I have been saying all along, we skip flooding rain. Flooding rain, as I mentioned, a big concern, as we will see heavy rain all the way from Florida up into the Appalachians. And so we could certainly, that needs to be considered. Mainly along the immediate coastline, it won't be like dumping 30 inches of rain or anything like that, which is good, but it will have some flooding impact, which certainly doesn't help things, especially in the Florida Peninsula. Storm surge also concerned, as I mentioned, 3 to 5 feet over much of the Florida coastline on the Atlantic side, as well as portions of the Big Bend. And then 2 to 4 feet in the other yellow areas, such as Georgia, South Carolina. There were a little bit more of the Big Bend, as well as south of North Palm Beach down to Hallandale Beach. And then some more storm surge. As I mentioned yesterday, Tampa Bay, they don't need more storm surge, and yet they're going to get it. Storm surge watches and warnings in effect for those areas as well. Wind is also a concern. As you can see, that hurricane force winds possible along the immediate coastline there in red, as well as gale force winds up to 60 miles an hour or more possible in orange. Tropical storm force winds possible anywhere in yellow. Also of concern are going to be tornadoes. A slight risk of tornadoes in that 5% area tomorrow, and then that second 5% area up in North Carolina, South Carolina, as you can see in orange on the other screen, or on the other side there. That's going to be a slight risk the day after tomorrow. And so, again, 5% chance of tornadoes in orange, 2% chance of tornadoes in the yellow on that on the larger expanded graphic. That's just the SBC screen grab for tomorrow, only on the right-hand side there. As I mentioned, it might reach hurricane strength. It might not. It really doesn't matter in terms of impacts. The main impacts are widespread wind as well as storm surge. Again, all impacts, but it's not like the most severely impacting storm. It's going to have all the impacts just like Ian did, but it's going to have nowhere near the magnitude of the impacts that Ian did. And so, again, making landfall south of Orlando, and then perhaps again on the Big Bend area, depending on how wide it swings, as we can see the European beginning to kind of cave to the GFS in terms of it makes the storm reach the Gulf side and then makes landfall near the Big Bend area. But as you can see on the GFS, it's much more of a consensus that it does reach the Gulf before making landfall once more in Florida and then rocketing off out of sight. So that's all for now. Chris, 6 for their Catholic